When I came back on, oops, when I came back on, I saw more food. It said lunch break till 1. I'm like, there's food there. We had the food this morning that looks so good. I wish I had the same ingredients with me so I could like cook with them. I'm sure mine won't turn out as good as his though. So I'm really pleased to introduce two folks today. We've got Chris Parkin. He's the Principal Business Manager for Salish School of Spokane. And we also have Bree Disatel, and she's the lead ECAP teacher and center director for the Salish School of Spokane. So welcome and thank you for coming.
Why Limla? Why Pia Isquis Tuckatikalks? Kin Sanaix he Olskaha Insulchin Sin Matmayatin Kikin Chubkulam Ol Ilmihum Kol he Skaha Insulchin Sin Matmayatin. Hello, my name is Bria Disatel. I am of the Sinaix band of the Cobble Confederated Tribes. I am the center director at the Salish School of Spokane. Here I also operate as our lead ECAP preschool teacher as well. I grew up on the Colville Reservation. My family has lived there, like essentially their entire existence. While I grew up kind of surrounded by the culture, I never really was super in touch with culture or more specifically language in my own immediate household. I was kind of familiar with a few words here and there, but the idea of language from my own tribe as a whole was kind of a completely, I guess, just kind of something that I couldn't even really fathom. I wasn't really even able to understand the concept of it. And growing up, I never really thought that I would, work in language or do anything like that. So when I went to college, I pursued early childhood education. There, I received my degree in children's studies with a minor in sociology. From there, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with that. I know the option was always there to teach. But then, there's all these other kind of branches. I'm like, do I want to do advocacy? Do I want to do social work? There's just so many other realms that I was thinking that I could apply this degree to. And I just really, it's like I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I really couldn't narrow it down. And so for a few years, I taught at a couple of different schools in a couple of different roles. This is in Spokane, Washington. Within these schools, I was not working with any kind of Indigenous population specifically. It was just kind of other private schools or charter schools. And then when I'd always had been familiar with the Salish School of Spokane. I was kind of unaware of just how in depth their language revitalization message and endeavor was. I, thought that it was a school that kind of touched on a few words here and there. And it wasn't until I accepted the position here that I truly realized just how immersive and how far like how wide the net is cast when they are reaching out to work with Insulcine revitalization. So I have been, like I said, I have been here at the Salish School for a little over a year now. And that is when my Salish language journey began. And again, growing up, while I was, kind of familiar with some things, it was really kind of just a whole new world to me. And so I remember my first day kind of, flipping through my language book thinking, oh my gosh, how, but just being around, at our organization, everyone here is speaking Salish all the time. So all the children speak Salish at school, all the teachers, staff, everyone in the kitchen. Um, and so it's kind of one of those things that you kind of just, I don't want to say it's sink or swim because that's kind of, a lot, but it really is, you're really set up for success here. And everyone just resonates with the same idea that language, revitalization should be first and foremost, the root of our cause. And from that, we can utilize that as our first foundational step to reach all these other avenues, whether it's, advocacy, community health, education, obviously. And so by kind of dipping my toes into this language revitalization realm, it's really, I believe, solidified my, I guess, my passion and my route in career wise. Like I was saying before, I, knew that I wanted to do work in some kind of realm with kids, obviously. And I it wasn't until I started working here that I realized that this kind of was, meeting kind of an apex of a lot of the things that I was really passionate about. I'm in the classroom, speaking language every day with the kids. I'm helping the children on their language journey. I'm helping other staff members on their language journey. And I'm, able to participate in conferences like this where I get to talk about, the things that I have done so far. And while I feel I'm just getting started, I also feel like I've come such a long way. And as an Indigenous person, I truly feel that however you're able to connect with your own culture is such a personal journey. And working in language was something that never really crossed my mind, but it has completely filled such a space within me that has just driven me to want to do more to advocate for, the Indigenous community and our kids here and just the community as a whole in general. And so working in the classroom where we are implementing language in any sort of form, if it's, it's not, I have to go to the bathroom. It is, Yatimi toy Coulson Etch Cotton. And, do you want strawberries? Han huming to come. We're really working it in every little small crevice and, like to the most that we are able to. And it's amazing to see these kids absorb it so fast. And I just can't, just because I know how much language has helped me as an adult, kind of accomplish what I want education wise, career wise. It's really just so fulfilling and so, great to be a part of that step and seeing that step in real time with children of like such a young age. And they just are completely enamored with the language. They love speaking it. They love hearing it. And to be able to, work in that every day is just a really, really beautiful thing. And it's, it's unlike anything else I've ever experienced in my life. And it's a lot of hard work. And, you know, a lot of people, it's kind of, even now, I'm just like, how do I explain this? But it's something that will continue to be important for years and years to come. And there's a lot of work to be done still, but, the most that we can do now is put in the work today and ensure that our children, have this connection with their culture, and then that these children and their families are connected with their culture, and to be able to reach out to community members to kind of ask them to join us and join hands and say, we have to do this together. We have to work in, saving this language together as a community in order to solidify, the preservation of it for years to come. With that said, I am going to introduce Chris Parkin. He is the business manager, principal here at Salish School Spokane. He's going to talk a little bit more in depth about exactly just how we teach language here and our fluency transfer system, and then just how that is implemented not only into classrooms, but implemented into the communities as far as teaching adult language learners as well.
White limlam tsakatsakals has das quilt. Actually, in gemik white king sin kailuchanai me pamip when wait na high in kailuchan in quilt that he goes in my martin that a high insach chin a high in quiltens in kailuchans is nak snilu ti sin eichkst. Or in noch in ilamichum he goes in my martin in his sitat. Or nach Chinese ku mi ben weten he in sach chin mi book steam he goes nak sealuchtet he call white colliatis nak sealed he seal he scale he quit geminks at hochol steam hat en kailuchen Kuyayakos hat in sach chin se maat en kuch mi ben weten he in sach chin lut sweet delikos in maat en quilt in sach chin to actually eat in quiltens kuya kuch mipen wheaten or he's quilted he's known when it he miss haskell stitchamala he miss haskell he seal he stitchamala he quick stitchamala mi talich mi stisel he skaluch chout talich mi stisel he in kailuchen so talich mi stisel he temhula or nuch mi ili in chiam equals snuck seals yat sweet chow teeps dis kaluch chow yat sweet chin kailuchinum or yat sweet white han a wheel tut in a wheel kut in a wheel he geminkt he skultet he goes cat in sach chin simat maiden. My boss always, all my bosses always told me, well, if you're going to speak, always share the language first. I'm speaking to you in Insach-Chin, Colville Salish. That's the indigenous language of my family, of my wife, my kids, my grandkids. And we're all learners of the language. So there's no one at Salish School Spokane who grew up speaking Insach-Chin among the adults that are there. We're all learning the language. And that was the desire. I'm married to Lorraine Wiley, the executive director and co-founder of Salish School of Spokane. That's why I have the pleasure of being on this journey with these good people. And the idea of Salish School of Spokane is that the most effective education and the best way of life for Indigenous people is one that is based on, grounded in traditional language and culture. And so at Salish School of Spokane, we're working to have our children and families all come together to form a cultural community, to speak the language together and have the traditional language and culture, the connection to the land, and the creation of a language culture community in which we take care of each other. We connect with one another on a foundation of traditional language and culture. That's kind of the focus and mission of Salish School of Spokane. It is notable that the mission statement of Salish School of Spokane doesn't actually have the word school in it. Our mission is dynamic Salish language revitalization. And this is based on a belief that connecting with one another through the traditional language and culture is a catalyst endeavor. It will, by doing that well, by doing that deeply, intensely with lots of work. We really firmly believe that the revitalization of traditional language and of course the culture that goes with it has a kind of specific gravity that will actually create positive outcomes across a whole bunch, across the spectrum of family and child and community development. So that's kind of our goal. That's what I was saying in the language. Ultimately, we want to come to this place represented by our school motto, which is Kuha Nawil, Kukush Nawil, Kutachut Nawil. We respect each other. We share with one another. We take care of one another. So I'm going to go through this little PowerPoint presentation to just summarize the kind of programming we have going on at Salish School of Spokane. And then we should have plenty of time for additional questions. You know, we're always on we're an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're in the city of Spokane. We only know of one other full-time Native American immersion school that's in a major metropolitan area. There's a full-time Ojibwe school in Minneapolis-St. Paul. And otherwise, Salish School of Spokane is certainly the only one this side of the Mississippi, full-time Native American immersion school that is in a major city off reservation. And we're always scrambling for funding, and funders like things like logic models. So what's showing on this slide is our logic model. And this is the logic of everything we do. We base all of our work on revitalizing, strengthening, reconnecting with traditional Salish language and culture. And then we want to connect all of our generations to rebuild a Southern Interior Salish language culture community. So the heart of the matter is the language and culture. So Insakchin, the language of instruction at our school, is a very, very critically endangered indigenous language. We think there are 2 surviving first language speakers among the membership of the Colville Confederated Tribes in Washington. That's like 9,500 members. And there are maybe 25 or 30 additional first language fluent elders in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia. The youngest speakers in their mid-60s. Most of our fluent surviving speakers are in their 70s and 80s. So something we've learned in the struggle, in the journey to become fluent in the language, to try to build an immersion school around an endangered language, is that the first thing we have to do is actually to train new adult fluent speakers. The key to all of our schooling program success, and I think we do have a certain success, is based on our ability to train new advanced fluent adult speakers. I think Tsakatsakaux Bria was a little bit shy today. She was hired on in September of 2023, September 18th. She started learning Insakchin in earnest. So it's just been 13 months. But she is actually an intermediate speaker of the language, and she was shy with us, but when she's with the students, she's quite a speaker of Insakchin. And that is very much the key to our schooling outcome successes. And that's the key to fulfilling our mission. Is with a critically endangered language, we have to build a fluency transfer system. And luckily we do have that in place. So we are able to take on teachers, trainees, parents, and in a very predictable, sequenced, and timely way, we can turn them into fluent speakers of the language. Once we're able to do that, then we have a second language revitalization strategy, which is immersion schooling for children. So our goal at Salish School of Spokane is for students to come to our school and be fully immersed in the language all day, every day, from 1-year-old until they're ready to go into running start college classes as a junior in high school. It's an up and down journey. People come and people go. So we're in the constantly training and retraining staff and building curriculum in order to achieve that. We kind of operate across these 8 programmatic areas. And all of this is driven by the notion of we want to create a cohorts and a community of fluent adults who are able to teach in an immersion school and who are also able to take the language outside of the classroom into families, into the community. This year we're operating an early ECEAP program. It's a language nest. We've just brought it back after some losses after COVID or due to COVID. So we've relaunched our language nest this year. We just have 5 children there. 4 of the 5 are funded through early ECEAP. And we are a subcontractor with Community College of Spokane. And it's just been tremendous to have the support of Community College of Spokane so that we can do Salish Immersion ECEAP and early ECEAP. And they've been a tremendous partner in supporting that. As far as we know, we continue to be the only ECEAP or early ECEAP in the state that is using a Native American language as a language of instruction for all day, every day. As I said, we have ECEAP as well. This year, our ECEAP classroom is 10 seats, and all 10 children are funded through ECEAP. And you can see this little guy from last year. He's on our Camas dig last May of 2024. We really worked to get the kids out on the land, connecting with traditional foods, being along the river, even, going out to Riverside State Park. We really want our urban Indian kids to get out there on the land and have that connection and in full Salish immersion. We also have a private school, certified private school for the state of Washington. We're certified for kindergarten through 12th grade. As a result of COVID, we ended up closing our bilingual high school program, but this year we have gone back up to 8th grade. A year from now, we should be up to 9th grade. So everything we teach, literacy, math, science, art, PE, music, our teachers are speaking in Selk'cheen to the students. And as you can see, we have 3 different elementary classes, and it's really something. Those 3rd grade and above kids are actually quite fluent. They can spend their whole day in the language. They're kids, so it's easy to speak English, so we have to give them encouragements, the stick and the carrot. And really striking in our middle school group, there are 8 of them in grades 6 through 8. And they can just have very complicated contemporary conversations about what's going on in their life in Selk'cheen. So they are a group of new fluent speakers in that who are 11, 12, 13 years old. But what we do, as Bria said, it is such work, but really seeing that group, and this is a group that was started with us when they were 1 year old. And here they are in 6th, 7th grade, 7th, 8th grade, and they are fluent speakers of Selk'cheen. Since we didn't have a high school program, we had to graduate out our 8th and 9th graders in 2022. So we've maintained connections with them through our Kusaniwil program, offering them opportunities to work in our evening childcare program and do an intensive summer language culture and academic program, help them stay connected with the culture community once they are fluent and want to go out into the wide world as secondary students. We run our Salish Language Educator Development Program. So our teaching staff are largely community members, lots of parents, other community members. We're very fortunate to have Bria come on, who already had her degree in family studies from Eastern Washington University. That's an exception for us. Usually we're taking folks who just have a background, have a high school diploma or GED. They have an interest in the language and the culture. And then we take them in, do language instruction through our SLED program, and give them on-the-job training. And those who want to be teachers, get them enrolled in an ECE certificate program through Spokane Falls Community College. But the key to all of our work is that every full-time employee at Salish School Spokane is in daily Salish language training. So we started 3 new staff just September 3rd this year. And those staff spend 5.5 hours of their day either in Salish immersion class, learning the language, or studying. So they're just with kids for a couple hours a day in that practicum placement in a classroom where they're encouraged to use the language and be around more fluent colleagues. So that was Bria's situation when she hired on last September 18th. She and her 5 colleagues had 6 hours of language training and study time per day. They spent 2 hours a day working in our after-school program. And then this year, they've transitioned down to 90 minutes of Salish language training per day. And then most of them are doing 5 or so hours in our classrooms as teachers, being in a Salish immersion environment paired with more fluent staff so that they can put what they have learned to use with the kids, be in a full immersion environment to build their proficiency. We also have a very large community language program. So because our language is so endangered, we, the #1 issue for us is just having enough fluent speakers to do everything that we'd like to do in the language. And so it's notable that at Salish School of Spokane, all of the parents complete at least 60 hours of language class per year in order to maintain their child's eligibility to attend the school. We've seen it over and over. Every ounce of research demonstrates that teaching kids the language in isolation, away from family language acquisition, is largely ineffectual and does not lead to the revitalization of an endangered indigenous language. What does work is an intergenerational approach in which children are involved in immersion language schooling, and the parents are also active language learners. So a majority of our parents are on a fluency track and are attending language class 4 hours per week. So we have night classes Monday through Thursday. Our school operates from 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. We have 7:30 to 5:30 before and after school and our immersion schooling program. And then from 6 to 8 p.m., we have a community language program. During that program, we provide complimentary childcare and we have dinner beforehand. We want to remove barriers to adults being able to come in and be learning the language along with their children. So at Salish School of Spokane right now, we're serving 48 students from 1-year-old up to 8th grade. 15 of those students are in early ECEAP or ECAP. And all of their parents are also language learners. And among those students, there are 23 intergenerational pairs where there are 23 children who are immersed in Salish language through schooling, and their parents are also have considerable proficiency in the language through either our SLED program or our evening parent language program. And that's where the action is, those intergenerational pairs where the use and transmission of language starts to take place inside of the family among generations. And ultimately, that's our goal, is to have the school be a catalyst for building a Salish-speaking language culture community in which all generations speak the language in Sahchin or other Southern Interior Salish languages, and children are once again raised in the language as a first language. Of course, we have to make all of our own curriculum. We do have an in-Sahchin language math curriculum that goes from kindergarten up to pre-algebra. We're working hard on building more science materials that are grounded in our traditional lands and territories and culture, but that also meet global standards for science education. And then we've got about 700 reading books in Sahchin. We need 7,000, so we're always working on that. Lots. And I guess our last programmatic area is, because we've had this little success, our executive director and cultural leader, Lorraine Wiley, in her 30s began a journey of learning her language. Her grandmothers were fluent speakers, but the language not passed down in order to protect people from that ugly brutality that was colonization and genocide. But in her 30s, Lorraine began to work to bring the language back to her family, bring it back to a community. And so we've been following her lead, and we've had some success. We've built a fluency transfer system that allows us to train new advanced fluent speakers of Insach-Chin. Our family has achieved 3 generations of fluency, where the grandparents, parents, and grandchildren are all new fluent speakers of the language. And so some folks around have seen us doing that work and have reached out and asked us to help them, and we've done our best to do that. So we're very honored that 24 Indigenous language communities around North America and Australia have adopted our Indigenous language fluency transfer system. And we work with them to help them adapt that system for their local language and ecology. And some of these groups are really having tremendous success revitalizing their critically endangered Indigenous languages. So that ILFTS is something we gift to any and all Indigenous language communities who want to use it as a tool for revitalizing their language and beginning the work of building a new fluent language culture community. As I said, we've had some successes. We have strong, really strong social emotional outcomes and learnings in our early childhood education program. And we have very strong academic outcomes. And it's all about that investment in community building. Our parents are highly invested in having their children have this kind of culture and language-based education, have them participate in a revitalized language culture community. And that parent commitment and the commitment of our teachers who are language learners, who are like Bria, coming and connecting with their traditional language and culture and working very hard to do community building around a schooling model, has given us a certain success. We have in our schooling program, all of our kids read at or above grade level in English, even though they spend their entire day in Salish immersion. And it's really just about the deep investment, the commitment of the parents and the staff, and giving those kids a sense of that they really can do whatever they want, and that we really can identify with one another, connect with one another, and do that by focusing on traditional language and culture and building a community. We have challenges. We're an independent 501c3, so we never have any regular funding. We've been very fortunate to have the support of DCYF and the ECEAP programs and Community College of Spokane. But our costs are about $24,000 per student, and our parents put in about 9% of our budget. So we're always working very hard on the financing side of things and keep this experiment going. We have a tremendous need for expanded facilities, more curriculum, and really opportunities in which our parents can have the kind of financial and social and cultural support so they can become fluent speakers of the language and really come to lead this language culture community. You may hear about us in the next several months. We have very crowded facilities, very limited facilities, and we use every square inch. So we're actually engaging in a capital project with Catholic Charities of Eastern Washington and other funders to build a new campus for Salish School of Spokane. So we're looking to raise $10.5 million so that we can expand our offerings and really create the cultural spaces necessary for our budding language culture community to thrive and have our students, have our families and kids really have everything that they so deserve. And I guess that's the end of that little PowerPoint. I do want to conclude my comments by talking about I'd mentioned, I think we have a very successful early ECAP and ECAP program. It's relatively small, but it's very successful. The kind of social emotional outcomes, and our kids hit kindergarten at full speed and just have very excellent academic outcomes once they go into school. And I think that the success of all of that, it's all about successful early childhood development. Really needs to be grounded in a holistic community approach, right? So I think because our mission focus is traditional language and culture, and we have to build systems of care that allow both children and adults to have the time, the capacity, encouragement to learn the language, to connect through culture, to be back on the land, to really strengthen intergenerational cultural connections. And by taking that kind of approach and making that our organizing principle, it has led to tremendous child development outcomes and academic achievement outcomes in schools. And I don't think it's magic. I think overall we're taking a holistic community development approach. And because the parents who come to Salish School Spokane, they commit so much time to learning the language along with their children and making that commitment to revitalize traditional culture, connect with one another. And that ultimately is the power of that community revitalization that's built on language revitalization that is really powering the really great outcomes that we're having for social emotional development, school readiness, academic achievement, athletic achievement, arts achievement, actually, and in community building a community of care along with a language culture community. And I'll stop there. In Salish, my name is Atten, which is magpie. And I'm given that name not out of any glorious honor, but because I talk a lot. I squawk a lot. So I'll stop there, and maybe we can fire up the Q&A or whatnot. And Bria is still with us. She can take questions. And we had asked our moderator to kind of look at our questions for us and read them out. And you can use the Q&A function or the chat, I'm guessing. They might give us some instructions about that.
I don't have any questions for you. Does anyone? Nope, no questions.
And we can take a
Here's
minute.
a question here. It says, what initial funding did you find the most integral in starting your program?
That is an awesome question.
Mhm.
Michelle Wiley Bunting and Lorraine Wiley are sisters. And with some other women, are Danica Parkin, Lorraine's daughter. They're the ones who came together to form Salish School of Spokane. And the first thing they did was put their hand out to everybody they knew. They didn't wait for government funding. They didn't wait for grant funding. They didn't wait for a relationship with the state or DCYF or anyone else. They went to everybody they knew. And that was in the winter and spring of 2010, and they raised $35,000 from friends and neighbors, and rented a little house and opened Salish School of Spokane, licensed as a home childcare initially. The Colville Tribal Council saw what they were doing, responded with some funds. The Kalispell Tribal Charitable Fund saw that and responded with some funds. But that has been a hallmark of Salish School of Spokane to this day. This week, we're launching our 2024 capital campaign, in which we're working to raise $250,000 from individuals, donors, and business donors. And so it's and of course now we have grants, and we have a grant from the Administration of Native Americans, and we have connections through ECEAP, and DCYF was helping us train new teachers with the TELF, et cetera. But there's nothing to substitute for just taking ownership of it yourself, your community, your families, your friends, make it happen. And then when you're successful and you start and you're successful, other funding comes from that success. So that's how they started.
Hey, Chris, we have, do you have a link for donations?
Oh, that's very sweet. Yeah, we do. We have at salishschoolofspokane.org. Near the top, there is a link for, the donation page, and I'll work to pop something here in the chat as well.
Okay, I was just starting to write it, but I'm like, oh my God, you talked so fast, I couldn't get it all.
Yeah, I'll try to post it into the
We
chat.
got one more, we got another question here. Do the council members support and engage the language programs? And I read a book about tribal leader will become more effective and respected if they can speak the original language. That's from Stan.
It's interesting. Salish School of Spokane is an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization that is situated off reservation in the city of Spokane. We've had very strong support from the Colville Tribal Business Council, financial support over the years. And we've had financial support from other surrounding tribes, the Spokane and Kalispel tribes. But they have not been our primary funders. And we've operated independently of tribal council. We certainly share our work with them and ask for their support and blessings. And it's politics, of course, but being off reservation and a 501c3 independent nonprofit, we have an independent relationship from council or from the tribal language programs, et cetera.
We also have a question from Manhil Tovar. It says, great work. Are you aware of other tribes following your model? I believe at one point the Yakima tribe was wanting to teach their own language to its members, but not sure if they continue or to do so currently. Keep up the great work.
Oh, thank you. The Yakima tribe does have an active language revitalization program. I'm not that familiar with it. In terms of our work with Southern Interior Salish, our fluency transfer system was adopted very early on by the Kalispel tribe for our sister language there. And they have been quite successful in operating an immersion school and training new advanced fluent speakers. There's a nonprofit on the Spokane Reservation, the Spokane Language House, led by Sulus II, Barry Moses, that's also using our fluency transfer approach to train new advanced fluent speakers of adults. And then likewise, the Salish Culture Committee, Salish Kootenai College, and the Inclusum Immersion School on the Flathead Reservation in Montana, they all use the Kalispel version of our fluency transfer system, and they're having good success on the Flathead Reservation, training new advanced fluent speakers, powering the immersion school at Inclusum, and they now have a Salish language educator degree at Salish Kootenai College using that system. Of course, there are other communities around North America. A couple notable are the Children of the Taku Society based out of Whitehorse, Yukon Territory. They've built our system out to the advanced level for interior Tlingit language. And then the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians at Highland, California, they have just 2 surviving speakers of their Serrano language, both of whom are in their late 80s. And they have built our system very rapidly in the last 2 years and now have a group of 8 or 9 new speakers of Serrano.
I don't see any other questions, but I just have to say, like, what amazing work. I get chills hearing you guys speak the language, and knowing these individuals that have done all this work. Just thank you so much for being here. It's just amazing.
I'm seeing one comment from Stan in the chat. Can you build on the concept that language creates different pictures, visions in a person's mind that are created by the words spoken because it begins or comes from the heart? I certainly think that's true. Learning a language is a transcendental act. When you are fluent in a language, that language has its own power to structure your thoughts, structure your heart in a sense. There's a feedback loop in the language and your lived experience. And we really think that's a lot of the power of rebuilding a language culture community, that folks who are engaged in revitalizing a critically endangered language and are delving into it. And as Bria has said, doing a lot of hard work, that ultimately it touches you deeply and changes your outlook towards how you describe reality, how you connect with other people. I don't know if Bria wants to add something to that.
No, I agree with everything that you said. It's definitely, the journey, I believe, is different for each person, especially each Indigenous person, but it definitely is a very powerful, personal, passionate journey. And just knowing that you are kind of planting a small seed by doing your work every day and having that promise to have it not only shared to future generations, but preserved for today in order for that to be shared is just, yeah, it's a very, very fulfilling work.
Mm.
Well, we
Polo
have,
oh, does somebody else want to read that, or? I'm
yeah,
kind of,
we have a couple
yeah.
questions. Sorry, they're coming in
Yeah.
quickly now.
Yeah,
What's
go
a
ahead.
what's a typical day look like for your ECAP kiddos, and what does a braided model of Western and traditional Native science look like?
I'll let you do ECAP, Bria, and then I'll do
Yeah,
science.
yeah. So a typical day for our ECAP kids. So every morning, the entire school, we get together and we do our morning drum circle where we pray and we sing, and it's just a way to really kind of unify everyone at the start of the day and kind of get back to our roots, you know, that to remind everyone, you know, we're in this together, that this is a community effort. And then from there, I think that that's one of the misconceptions about, especially our immersion preschool, is people are, I think, a lot of times fascinated when they come in. They're like, it's just like preschool. And I'm like, yeah, except that we're speaking Salish. And so we do a lot of, like I said, it's an interesting act to juggle, because not only are you um, teaching Salish and speaking Salish all the time, we are also introducing, you know, other concepts, because these are these children's, you know, first time in school. You know, we're getting them familiar with, you know, alphabets, shapes, you know, kind of just like the basic preschool, you know, models, doing social emotional, working on gross and fine motor skills. And it's just, as an ECAP teacher, it's the dance of, you know, figuring out the best way to teach this and get this, I guess, you know, point or topic across, but within Insulkchin, because that at the end of the day is our biggest, you know, our biggest goal. And so a typical day in the classroom, we do, in the mornings, we'll do a circle time where it is, like I said, everything is completely in Insulkchin at all times. So it's, you know, we do our calendar, we work on counting. We have a daily question every day that we ask the children. And it can be anything from, you know, Stiman mis hast akanilu, which is, what's your favorite color? And then, you know, it's like, Han has to Kurik and Miskuri. Do you like yellow or do you like orange? And so just by kind of like giving these small little tidbits to the children every single day is just kind of slowly expanding their vocabulary, is all like along with the accompaniment of just complete immersion at all times. And so after that, we work as a free choice center model. And so we have a social emotional area, we have a cultural area, dramatic play, a manipulative area, a library, we have a block area. So like just kind of like your very typical preschool, I guess, setup, but within everything, Insulkchin and Salish culture is kind of just worked its way in our own manner, whether that's labeling, whether that's, you know, utilizing natural materials instead of a store-bought manipulative. That is definitely something that we always try to work towards, is implementing Q. We also, within our library, we also provide copies of our chaptik, which is our traditional stories. And so with those, children have access to those materials at all times. We frequently utilize those within our circle time or our winter storytelling. And I would say, it's interesting to explain because it's something that, you know, you would think that you have to really work towards. And there are certain areas, you know, where I personally as a teacher, you know, I'm like, how do I teach this concept in Salish? But a lot of it truly just comes down to speaking as much as possible, and just immersing the children. And that, I would say, is the backbone of our typical day. A lot of the, you know, day-to-day stuff is kind of routine, but everything that we do is within the language and is focusing the language as our primary goal.
And so that's a thing that comes up. It's like, well, sure, you're doing Salish immersion all day, but what about culture? And our staff laughs like, what could be more cultural than being in Salish immersion all day? And so I think a lot of the culture questions come up, they come from an English language standpoint, in that if we're in an English language program, we have to really work to invest the programming with culture. But if we're in a Salish immersion situation and our traditional stories and images and cultural markers are present in full immersion, we've checked the culture box. We're looking good. And then we just got to get them out on the land. So I think a typical day kind of looks like school, but lots of days don't. And that means they're out digging camas, or they're down at the river, or a week ago, Friday was our traditional foods feast. So the kids were eating all these traditional foods that they had dug through our annual round.
And Chris, I know we're at time, but there's two more questions. I don't know if you could, I might quickly touch on them. The first one from Tessa says, can you speak at all about how language revitalization is interconnected with prevention? It's a great question.
I could talk for hours, but I'll make it short. This is our fundamental belief. As we have built a fluency transfer system, in order for it to be successful, it didn't take us long to find out that with our fluency transfer system, we also have to build a system of care and community development, because people can't engage with language revitalization when they're struggling with other unmet needs. And all successful language revitalization work requires the construction and implementation of a system of care and community building to go with it. And that's what gives language revitalization a very intense, specific gravity, that it can be a tremendous solution in areas of prevention or other areas of social development or education, etc. Because when we do language revitalization well, we're automatically talking about a holistic community building approach that gives tremendous support to the learner. And you know, the opposite of use and substance use disorder isn't not substance use disorder. The opposite of substance use disorder is deep engagement in something exciting and interesting and beautiful. And that's just what our language work is. It offers such a tremendous opportunity and such a beautiful connection. And that's why it can be so powerful in solving other issues. On donations, general donations to ECEAP are unrestricted funds, and we mostly apply those to support our parent language program and our language teacher training program. Our biggest job is having enough fluent adults to do all the work, and that's generally where we devote those funds. And then Polo had a quick question about science. It's interesting. We have a really active field science program. They are literally in the Spokane River with the riverkeeper, doing turbidity studies and water quality analysis and taking tissue samples from crawdads to look for heavy metals and mercury. And they're doing density studies of botany studies on our traditional plants, where they're still found, what are the population densities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, learning to express taxonomy and insachchin. And it's hard to distinguish what's Western, what's not Western. It's just all about getting out there and engaging the world and being on the land and having your hands dirty and having the experience and with problem solving and thought. And I guess that is what drives our amazing science program and amazing staff members, really. It's, of course, in all of our quality education programs, it's the people that make it happen.
Bria, Chris, thank you so much for being here, for educating us. It was great. Glad that this is really coming to fruition. Can't believe it just started with some ladies knocking on doors, going to people with 35,000. It's amazing. So again, thank you. We are on break only for 3 more minutes. Sorry, gang, 2 o'clock. So you have time to get a quick water.